Hello everyone, my name is Sid and today I'm revisiting some of my theories about certain glitches. So in my tutorial videos about the Superjump, the Glidewalk and the first person dive, I have my theories about why they work, but I was always kind of missing something, which I wrote off as Rayman getting a weird hitbox in first person mode. Which is close, but not quite correct. However, GamePro 011 told me the Superjump likely works the way it does because of collision detection, and I felt like it was the missing piece to some of my theories. But after rethinking them a bit, I actually found more likely theories and just completely overhauled some of them. Now, for those who don't know, collision detection is essentially the game checking whether a character or object's hitbox is overlapping with the environment and reacting to that. It takes up resources, however, so it's not uncommon for the collision detection values to change a lot depending on the character's or object's actions or movement. Now, the kind of reaction that is triggered when collision is detected varies on a game-by-game basis, as does the reaction time, and as such it's not uncommon to abuse these reactions or slow reaction times to perform glitches. One thing in Rayman 3 that changes the collision detection is the Rayman standing still, because it would be a waste of resources to check for a lot of collision when there is no movement, so this can be abused in a few ways. Keep in mind these are still just theories based upon my game knowledge. First of all, the Superjump. First person mode forces Rayman into his standing position, which, as I said previously, changes the collision detection, and it would be fine were it not for the Superjump glitch where we can use gravity to actually move while the game forces Rayman into standing position. So now that Rayman is moving with this altered collision detection, this allows him to clip into, let's say a ledge. The game's reaction is to push Rayman out, but by clipping into the ledge into a certain way, the game will do so with an incredible amount of force, triggering what we call the Superjump. Since every ledge is different, however, clipping correctly can be significantly more difficult and will require certain timings and angles, or in the case of most ledges is flat out impossible. The direction in which the game pushes you out of ledge also varies depending on the ledge. In most cases the game will push you out the same way you clipped into the ledge, but there are cases where it can push you into other directions. Oh, and one last thing. The higher the FPS, the more frames you have to actually clip into the ledge properly, which would explain why higher FPS makes for easier super jumps. Next up, the Glidewalk. This once again abuses the fact that first person mode forces you into standing position. We don't necessarily use it for its clipping potential initially, though glidewalking can easily be combined with a super jump, but in this case we use it to get into the air while being forced into the standing position. It doesn't matter whether you get into the air by falling off a ledge or by being pushed out of a ledge you've clipped into, what's important is that being in the air allows you to activate hover mode while still being forced into the standing position for a small amount of time because of the delay on the first person mode. You see, what happens is that the game forcing Rayman into standing mode cancels out the hover because it thinks you landed on the ground, something that would trigger standing mode. Values that don't get changed when landing though are Rayman's movement speed and falling acceleration, because that would be a waste of resources and time considering you're not going to be falling or moving if you're in standing position. So as long as you keep holding onto the hover button, you will keep these values along with the falling speed of standing mode, which happens to be the same as the falling speed of hovering mode. This was probably to allow for the altered collision detection without Rayman clipping into the ground because his falling speed is too high. Anyway, the reason you want to be holding onto the hover button for as long as you want the glitch to be active is that when you release the hover button while in the air, the game will think you just stopped hovering and will alter these values to fit the falling animation that also gets triggered. But as long as you hold on to the hover button, you will be able to move around as if you were hovering while having the collision detection of the standing mode, allowing you to kind of clip your way up or even through walls, rather than being pushed down as the hovering mode collision detection would cause you to do. The fact that you remain in standing position after the initial setup is no longer the effect of first person mode, but rather that there's simply nothing triggering a different animation until you either let go of the hover button midair or land on the ground and start moving. Last but certainly not least, the first person dive. Now, the theory for this one is still somewhat the same as my original theory and doesn't have a lot to do with collision detection per se, other than the fact that you can clip into the invisible wall a little bit for an easier breakout. What I did find out after making the tutorial video, however, is that you don't actually need first person mode for anything other than the initial setup, allowing you to have a third person camera while going for the dive. The reason I think is pretty similar to the Glidewalk in the sense that you only use first person mode to cancel out the initial swim animation by putting you in the standing animation, which you will then stay in because there's nothing triggering a new animation until you either start moving or press the jump button. Swimming mode itself, however, never got cancelled because, as I said in the original video, the only thing that cancels swimming mode is jumping, and as such starting to move will give you the movement animations and values you would have in swimming mode because, well, you are in swimming mode. One question I still had though was, if you are in swimming mode despite being in the standing animation, why can you still fall down? Because swimming mode sets your height to the same height as the top of the water. The answer I came up with is that I think part of the process of setting Rayman's height is cancelling Rayman's falling speed and acceleration in order to keep him on that height, and it did actually do that when you first hit the water. But it got set back to its standing mode value when first person mode forced you into the standing animation. Falling speed, I imagine, is one of the things the game actually checks for in standing mode to make sure you're actually standing on the ground. As soon as you start moving, however, the game will start checking and setting your height again, which is being done to make sure you stay on the correct level and don't use certain walls to gain extra depth or something. After you've started moving, well, you know the story, you can swim pretty much anywhere until you jump. Well then, that's about all I wanted to tell you, and I have to say that these theories make significantly more sense to me than my original theories did. If they're actually correct, I don't know, but either way, thank you for watching and have fun.